All right, so we got to talk about this story. Variety has quotes from Quentin Tarantino, legendary filmmaker, directed my favorite movie of all time, Pulp Fiction, and a lot of his films are in my top 20, top 30. I mean, I love Hateful Eight, Reservoir Dogs. The guy's a genius in many ways. He has praised Joker 2 and says Joaquin Phoenix gives one of the best performances I've ever seen, which, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix always gives great performances. And then he says it's an F you to comic book geeks in Hollywood. Now, if you remember, when I first did my review for Joker 2, Folie et Deux, I said that there's going to be some people who are film fans, especially some of the more auteur artistic film fans, who are going to praise this movie as being like genius and a step in the right direction. I knew that was coming. And you want to talk about film fans. I don't know if there's any director except maybe Martin Scorsese who watches more movies than Quentin Tarantino. The guy's an encyclopedia when it comes to films, and I respect that about him. Even though I knew that there would be fans of this film, I didn't think it would happen right away. I thought it would take some time and for things to cool down with Todd Phillips in DC, and then fans would come around to it once they understand that this is more of a film looking at Arthur Fleck and at toxic, mentally ill relationships versus it being about the Joker. I knew that it would find an audience. I did not expect Quentin Tarantino this soon after it flopped to praise the movie. Now, he was on a podcast and he discussed it, and this is what he said, and I'm going to go into what his comments are and give my thoughts on it. So he says, I really liked it, really, a lot, like tremendously, and I went to see it expecting to be impressed by the filmmaking, Tarantino said. But I thought it was going to be an arm's length intellectual exercise that ultimately I wouldn't think worked like a movie, but that I would appreciate it for what it is. And I'm just nihilistic enough to kind of enjoy a movie that doesn't quite work as a movie, or that's like a big giant mess to some degree. Sounds like something Rian Johnson would have said. You remember when he said that he likes movies that are very divisive? I don't think Tarantino feels that way all the time, but it comes off like that. And I didn't find it an intellectual exercise. I really got caught up into it. I really liked the musical sequences. I got really caught up. I thought the more banal the songs were, the better they were. I find myself listening to the lyrics for once in my life in a way I never have before. So, in a funny way, he's kind of giving the movie a backhanded compliment by saying, okay, the more I saw the movie, the more cringe it got, although he doesn't use that word, the more he appreciated it. And I think the reason as to why he's saying this is because Joker 2 is anything but a comic book movie. It does not follow the formula of any other comic book movie ever made, including the first Joker. Now, here's the issue with this comment. First of all, you need to be aware that Quentin Tarantino, like Martin Scorsese, is not a fan of comic book films. They both have commented on this in the past multiple times. They feel like it's more like a roller coaster than an actual movie. They feel like it's not really cinema. They feel like, it's just homogenized Hollywood tripe. And while I do respect both those guys and I understand where they're coming from, yes, a lot of comic book movies have recycled plots. That is unquestionably true. And a lot of them are garbage, especially the ones that Sony's put out this year. But a lot of them are brilliant, like the first Joker, like The Dark Knight, like The Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. There's brilliance in these stories, not just because of the flashy special effects, but because of the characters. There's no way that I believe that Quentin Tarantino would dislike a movie like Captain America Winter Soldier. You just can't. Like it's so far removed from being like the other Marvel movies. It's purely an espionage spy film with a little bit of, over the top dramatics. It's very much toned down compared to like Doctor Strange or Guardians of the Galaxy. But you have to understand that Tarantino does not like the Hollywood system. There was stories that came out back in 2015 that he was pissed off that his film The Hateful Eight, which dropped about a week or two after Force Awakens, was getting kicked out of movie theaters to open up more screens for Force Awakens because of how big that movie was. I remember he was very pissed off about that. So some of these guys like Scorsese and Tarantino, they like to tell stories and have like deeper character, deeper characters and more realistic three-dimensional characters. And I respect that, and I love their films. At the same time, though, not every comic book movie is like that. I think what it is with these guys is that the sheer volume of comic book movies that come out per year, and it's not so bad now compared to a few years ago when we had 3 Marvel movies, 2 DC movies, a bunch of shows running. It really, the reality is that after the success of the Avengers in 2012, and remember, Dark Knight Rises also came out around then, the market was just flooded with comic book films. It was just a lot. Now, a lot of them were great, right? But I can understand as a filmmaker his frustrations with, and I don't know if he's envious. I'm not going to say that about the guy because I don't think he's that kind of guy. I don't know the guy. But maybe he feels jaded because these movies get so much more attention. Like, the thing about Tarantino and Scorsese and Christopher Nolan is that when they put a movie out, their name, they're the few directors that are household names to movie fans, even the more casual movie fans. So you don't have to be a hardcore film buff to know the name Quentin Tarantino. He has a style, he has a track record, and he's made successful movies since the early 90s. Scorsese has made successful films since the 70s. So these guys have history. These guys are respected. And while they may not have the budgets or even make the kind of income that Avengers or Spider-Man No Way Home made, they do make a ton of money. No question about it. There's very few movies that I would consider flops from those guys. I'm not sure if Tarantino's ever had a flop, especially not financially. He's always made money back. So I'm not sure if that's what it is, but you have to look at it from his perspective. And so when you look at it from his perspective and the fact that he does like a lot of different types of films, and he even said here that he saw a bit of Natural Born Killers in Joker, which is true. I mean, Mickey and Mallory were a lot more like Joker and Harley Quinn in Joker 2 than Joker and Harley Quinn from Batman the Animated Series. There's truth to that. So I could see him, and it says that right here, actually. I didn't even read that, and it says it right here. I could see him sort of relating to that. And like I said, man, I knew it. I didn't think it'd be Tarantino, but I knew that there would be some people that are going to love this film. Most hated it. And the problem is that the first Joker, all those things that Tarantino likes about the deeper aspects of telling a story are in the first Joker. The issue with the new Joker is that it changes up what it's supposed to be and changes up the first film and sort of decreases its value while also being a very weird formula. It feels more like an extra like epilogue to the first film than its own story. Now, like I said before, Joker 2 is not a great movie, but I did not hate it like everybody else did. I saw some brilliance there. I think with some re-editing, you can make a better movie out of it, but Tarantino loving it for some weird reason just doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. And of course, the fact that he's also been inspired by many filmmakers. The first Joker was literally Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy combined into one film with Joaquin Phoenix. So I can see why Tarantino liked it, because he's a huge, huge fan of Taxi Driver. And who isn't, right? So it's just interesting that one of the most prolific and respected directors is sticking up for Todd Phillips. What do you think? Do you agree with Tarantino? Do you think that people are going to look into this film differently in a few years and maybe give it a different spin and maybe say, you know what, maybe that was brilliant? There's a lot of movies that are hated when they first come out that find an audience years later. A lot. RoboCop 2, Kevin Costner's Waterworld. Those are just two examples of movies that came out that I remember coming out that were not well liked until later. There's even people who didn't even like Empire Strikes Back. And now it's considered one of the greatest sequels ever. So time will tell with these things. Let me know what you think in the comments below.